The sky over Earth had never looked so dark. It wasn't the usual storm clouds or the shadow of nightfall. No, this was something else, something far more terrifying. From the vast expanse of space, the first alien ships appeared without warning. Massive, sleek, and imposing, they sliced through the heavens like giants from a nightmare. Their hulls shimmered in the sunlight, dark and smooth, unlike anything humans had ever seen. The cities below trembled as the shadows of these colossal ships passed over them. For a moment, the world stood still. People stared up at the sky in disbelief. Was this real? Could it be? It didn't take long before the panic set in. News stations broadcasted the sight, calling for calm. But inside, the world's leaders were anything but calm. The alien ships, more than a dozen of them, moved silently, their presence so massive that entire nations felt dwarfed beneath their weight. The sight was awe-inspiring and terrifying. Earth had never been prepared for this moment. No one had expected an invasion of this scale, especially not from beings beyond the stars. Humanity had been focused on its own struggles, wars, environmental disasters, political instability, and the idea that alien forces might one day arrive was considered nothing more than a distant, improbable fantasy. But now, the impossible was standing over them. The first alien ship lowered itself into Earth's atmosphere, emitting a low hum that resonated through the air. A voice boomed over every major broadcast. It was clear, authoritative, and cold. "This is your only warning. Surrender or face annihilation." The message echoed in every city, on every channel, and every screen. Governments scrambled to react, but what could they do? No one had ever dreamed of something like this. In their desperation, they reached for old plans, but none had the resources or the technology to match what the aliens had brought with them. The world was on the brink of chaos. Nations debated whether to fight or surrender, but it was all a blur of panic. Meanwhile, inside Earth's emergency military command, the situation was growing worse by the second. General Harris paced in front of a row of massive screens, each showing a different view of the alien ships now in Earth's orbit. Each one was perfectly designed for war, their weapons powerful enough to obliterate any human city in a single strike. And yet, nothing had happened yet. Were the aliens waiting? Or was this only a warning shot? "We don't have anything," General Harris muttered, his voice hoarse. Nothing that could stand against them. Beside him, Colonel Patel typed furiously on a nearby keyboard, calling up every defense network available. Satellites, missile systems, anything that could stop an attack. But the alien ships were silent, seemingly waiting. "There's one thing," Colonel Patel said slowly, glancing up from the screen. "But it's a long shot." General Harris froze. "What are you talking about?" "It's classified," Patel replied. "A project from decades ago. It was never fully developed, deemed too risky and too costly to finish. But the blueprints are still in the archives." General Harris turned, confused. "A project? What project?" Patel's eyes flickered with uncertainty, but he didn't hesitate. "It's called the Horizon, a warship built in secret, using technology that predates everything we know. It's old, it's barely functional, but it's our last hope." "Where is it?" Harris asked, his voice demanding. "Underground in Nevada," Patel answered. "In storage. It was abandoned after the program was shut down, but if we can get it running, it might stand a chance." Harris didn't wait for more. "Get a team on it. Now." In the remote, hidden facility deep in the Nevada desert, Captain Alina Darius stood in front of a rusted, aging vessel, the Horizon. Her breath hitched. The ship was not what she expected. The hull was scratched and corroded, and the once shiny metal was now dulled by decades of neglect. The exterior looked like a junkyard project, cobbled together with mismatched parts. Yet, despite its shabby appearance, there was something about the ship that felt alive. The bones of a warrior, long forgotten but waiting to be awakened. Captain Darius stepped forward, her boots making a soft echo as she walked up the ramp to the ship's bridge. The door slid open with a groan. She stepped inside, the air stale, the lighting dim. It felt like a ghost ship, an artifact from an era long past. She ran her fingers over the controls, wondering if the ship would even start. "This is crazy," she muttered to herself. "This is our last hope." But she couldn't afford doubt. Not now. Earth's fate rested on her shoulders. The horizon was old, and it wasn't ready for battle, but it was the only weapon they had. If it worked, it could stand up against the aliens. She turned to the small crew assigned to her. Most of them were engineers, scientists, and soldiers who had never even seen the ship before, let alone operated it. It wasn't just the ship that was outdated. It was their knowledge of it too. They were all walking into the unknown. "We're about to face an enemy we can't even comprehend," Captain Darius said, her voice strong and steady, though she was shaking inside. "But if we don't try, we're all dead. So let's make this work." With a deep breath, she pressed the power button, and the ship hummed to life, slowly and with effort. It was working, against all odds. The battle for Earth had begun. The ship's systems flickered to life, but slowly, painfully. Captain Alina Darius stood in the dimly lit bridge of the horizon, watching the control panels buzz with life. The ancient warship's massive engines groaned, as if awakening from a long slumber. Each flicker on the console, each soft hum from the ship's heart felt like a miracle. She had no idea how long it would last. Would the ship hold up in combat? Would they even be able to get it into the air? "Captain, we're up and running," said Lieutenant Morales, his voice filled with disbelief. "But the ship is unstable. We'll need to proceed carefully." Darius nodded, glancing at the swirling display of the alien ships in orbit above. The enemy fleet was massive, dozens of warships, each one much larger and more advanced than anything Earth had. They hovered ominously, a wall of destruction waiting to happen. There was no time for hesitation. "We move now," Darius commanded. "Get this ship ready for launch. We don't have the luxury of waiting any longer." As the engineers scrambled to activate the old systems, Darius couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty gnawing at her. This wasn't just a mission to fight. It was humanity's last chance for survival. The alien fleet had given them no options. The message was clear: surrender or be wiped out. But Darius wasn't ready to give up just yet. She'd been trained for situations like this, but nothing in her training had prepared her for what was to come. An ancient, battered ship, a ragtag crew, an enemy that far outmatched them. "Power's at 80%, reported Lieutenant Timmons, one of the engineers. "We're pushing the systems to their limit. The shields aren't fully operational yet. We'll be vulnerable if we engage." Darius looked out at the horizon. The alien ships had begun to move. They weren't waiting anymore. "We don't have time for perfect," she said firmly. "The shields will hold for long enough. Just get us into space. Full thrust. Now." The horizon shook as the thrusters roared to life. The ship trembled, sending a shiver through Darius's spine as the ancient warship slowly lifted off the ground. The earth beneath them receded as the ship rose, its engines whining against the strain of taking off. Outside, the alien fleet remained motionless, silent but massive, their hulking forms casting shadows over Earth's cities below. The horizon ascended through the atmosphere, struggling to gain speed. Every minute counted now. The closer they got to the enemy, the greater the risk of failure. "Captain, we're in the atmosphere," Lieutenant Morales reported, his voice tight with focus. "We're heading straight for their fleet." "Maintain course," Darius ordered. "We've come this far. We can't turn back now." But as the ship climbed higher, something unexpected happened. A voice filled the ship's bridge. A deep, almost mechanical voice that rattled through the horizon speakers. "Human vessel, you are outmatched," it said. "Surrender, and your destruction will be swift. Resist, and you will be crushed." Darius clenched her fists. The alien was speaking directly to them, as if they could already see them, already know their every move. It was meant to instill fear, to make them doubt, but she wouldn't fall for it. "Do your worst," she muttered, more to herself than to anyone else. "We're not going down without a fight." The ship lurched as they broke through the last layer of Earth's atmosphere, now speeding toward the heart of the enemy fleet. It was like they had entered a new world. Vast, empty space stretching out before them, broken only by the massive alien warships surrounding them. Darius could feel the tension in the air, the weight of every human life on her shoulders. She turned to her crew, her voice calm despite the pressure mounting around them. "Take us in, slowly. We can't afford to make a mistake. Prepare for evasive maneuvers." The horizon lurched again as it entered the shadow of the alien fleet. Darius felt her pulse quicken. The time for diplomacy was over. Now, all that mattered was survival. But then, as they moved closer, something even more unexpected occurred. The alien ships began to open fire. The first blast hit the horizon hard, sending the ship into a violent spin. The entire vessel rocked as the hull shuddered, groaning under the pressure. The shields flared briefly but held, absorbing the hit. The damage was minimal, but the impact was enough to send Darius's heart racing. "Shields holding, but they won't last long at this rate," shouted Morales, his voice filled with panic. "Return fire," Darius commanded, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around them. "We fight back, now." The Horizon's weapon systems came to life. Outdated and inefficient as they were, the guns on the ship were still capable of dealing significant damage if aimed correctly. The crew scrambled to lock on to the nearest alien ship. A volley of plasma fire shot from the ship's cannons, hitting one of the alien warships head-on. To their surprise, the blast did some damage. The alien ship reeled, but it wasn't enough to take it down. Instead, it retaliated with a barrage of energy blasts, shaking the horizon again. Darius gritted her teeth, determined not to let fear win. They were outgunned, but they were also human. And that meant something. "We might not have their technology," she said, her eyes locking onto the distant alien fleet. "But we have something they don't. We have the will to fight." And with that, the battle for humanity's survival had truly begun. The horizon shuddered again as another blast from the alien fleet rattled its frame. The ship's shields flared brightly, flickering like a dying light bulb. It wasn't much. Earth's outdated weapons were no match for the advanced technology the alien fleet wielded, but the ship wasn't out of the fight yet. Captain Darius gritted her teeth, staring at the monitor showing the damage to the ship. The hull had already taken several hits, and the ship's energy reserves were plummeting. They had no way of keeping up with the alien firepower, and the Horizon's old weapons could only fire for so long before running out of ammo. The crew had only minutes to figure out a way to turn the tide before their ship was reduced to scrap. "Damage report," Darius barked, gripping the edge of her console. "Shields are at 30%. Lieutenant Morales replied, his face tight with concern. "Weapon systems are at half capacity. The engines are fine, but they won't hold if we keep taking this kind of fire." Darius's mind raced. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about winning. She glanced out the view screen at the alien ship circling, waiting to deliver the final blow. They were tactical and relentless, but Darius could see something they didn't, something the Zakar hadn't accounted for. "Give me the full range of the weapon systems," she ordered. "Target the lead alien ship. All our firepower. Now." The crew scrambled to reroute power, and Darius felt the tension rising in her chest. They didn't have the luxury of time. The Zakar were closing in for the kill, confident in their inevitable victory. They thought the humans would surrender or die without a fight. But Darius wasn't ready to accept defeat. "Fire," she commanded. The Horizon's cannons roared to life once more, sending a volley of fire straight at the alien flagship. The shots hit hard, but the alien ship absorbed them easily, barely flinching. Not enough. Morales muttered, staring at the screen. They're too tough. We can't break through their defenses. The alien fleet wasn't pulling any punches. Their attacks were unrelenting, each one shaking the ship to its core. Darius could feel the sweat beginning to form on her brow as the minutes ticked by. She needed something else, something unpredictable that could catch the Zakar off guard. Then it hit her. "Take us closer," Darius ordered suddenly, her eyes narrowing. "We're going to give them a surprise they won't see coming." The bridge crew exchanged uncertain glances, but Darius held her ground. This was their only chance. Full throttle. "Get us in close to their flagship," she commanded. The Horizon lurched forward, its engines roaring with a speed the ship hadn't seen in decades. The ship's hull groaned as it closed the distance between them and the alien fleet. Darius's heart raced as she watched the alien ships react. They didn't expect this. They hadn't prepared for a human ship to rush into battle like this. The distance between the Horizon and the alien flagship closed quickly, and Darius could see the enemy ship's massive guns begin to power up. She knew what they were planning. It was their last chance to destroy them, but the Horizon wouldn't let that happen. "Prepare the boarding teams," Darius barked. "We're going to disable their weapons." "Are you out of your mind, Captain?" Lieutenant Timmons exclaimed. "We're barely holding it together here. And you want to board one of their ships?" "Yes," Darius said, her voice calm but firm. "It's our only shot. We're not running from them. We're going to make them fear us." Before Timmons could respond, Darius gave the order. The Horizon raced forward, closing the gap between them and the alien ship. The alien flagship's weapons began to fire, but they were too slow to adjust to the sudden change in course. The Horizon juked and weaved, dodging the shots that should have hit them dead on. "Now," Darius shouted. The ship's docking bay doors opened, and the boarding pods were deployed. The tiny pods shot out into space, rocketing toward the alien ship. They flew silently, disappearing into the shadows of the enemy's warship. Inside the alien ship, a series of alarms blared, signaling an unexpected breach. The Zakar ships had never dealt with anything like this. Humans weren't supposed to be capable of such tactics. And now, as the boarding parties infiltrated the alien vessel, they realized just how wrong they were. On the Horizon, Darius watched the first live feed from the boarding pods. Armed with weapons designed to disable, not destroy, the humans infiltrated the alien flagship, cutting through its defenses like a knife through butter. The surprise was on the Zakar. The invasion was fast and brutal. It didn't matter how technologically advanced they were. The Zakar didn't understand human tenacity or the will to survive. "This is just the beginning," Darius whispered to herself as she watched the footage. "They thought we'd back down. They thought we'd be easy prey." But the truth was different. The humans weren't going to lie down and die. They were ready to fight back with everything they had. And now, with their secret weapon, human determination, they would show the aliens what it really meant to mess with Earth. The Horizon drifted in space, barely holding together as the battle raged on. Captain Darius stood at the helm, watching the footage from the boarding pods with intense focus. The crew, though battered and tired, were moving with purpose now. They had taken the first step in turning the tide of this war, but there was no time to celebrate. The Zakar fleet was far from defeated, and the fight was far from over. "Status report," Darius barked, her eyes never leaving the screen. "We've disabled 2 of their heavy cannons," Lieutenant Morales said, his voice steady but strained. "But they're fighting back hard. We're still taking heavy fire from their destroyers." Darius nodded, her expression hardening. The Zakar ships weren't going to go down easily, but the Horizon had taken them by surprise. And now it was time to press the advantage. "Get us closer to their command ship," she ordered. "We need to disrupt their command center and stop their coordination." "Are you sure about this?" Morales asked, his brows furrowing. "We're outgunned, Captain. One more hit and—" "I know the risks," Darius interrupted, "but we don't have a choice. If we don't strike now, They'll regroup and finish us off. This is our moment." Morales hesitated, then gave a single nod. "Aye, Captain." Engaging maneuver. The Horizon groaned under the strain as its engines powered up, its battered hull creaking. But the ship surged forward, cutting through space toward the Zakar command ship. The alien ships tried to intercept, but they weren't prepared for this kind of reckless human tactic. "Prepare the secondary weapon systems," Darius ordered. "We'll make them think we've got more firepower than we actually do. Get their attention." The secondary weapons fired, blasts that were weaker than what the Horizon's primary weapons could manage, but they created a huge spectacle. The Zakar ships turned their attention to the Horizon, focusing their fire on the threat, while their defenses against the boarding pods weakened. "We've got their attention," Darius said, a spark of satisfaction in her eyes. "Now let's see how they handle a surprise of their own." Lieutenant Timmons, standing at his console, shouted, "The secondary pods are ready for launch, Captain. The breach team is prepped and waiting." "Good," Darius said, her voice cold and steady. "Launch them. This is our chance." The docking bay doors opened once more, and a second wave of boarding pods shot into the void. This time, they were headed directly for the Zakar command ship. Inside the Horizon, everyone watched as the pods raced through space, accelerating toward the heart of the alien fleet. On the bridge, Darius felt the tension in the air thicken as the seconds stretched out. She knew this was the last chance. If the second wave failed, they wouldn't get another opportunity. But something in her gut told her this would work. Humans were resilient. And if there was one thing the Zakar hadn't accounted for, it was that. The live feed flickered on the screen. First, nothing. Then, as the pods made contact with the alien ship, explosions erupted. The Zakar were caught off guard. They had expected a direct assault, not a stealthy, coordinated strike from the inside. The explosions tore through their command ship's hull, creating a hole large enough for the human boarding teams to infiltrate. "Boarding teams have made contact with the command ship," Lieutenant Morales called out. "We've disabled their communications. The fleet is in disarray." Darius clenched her fists. This was it. With their communications down, the Zakar fleet was in chaos. Their battle coordination had broken, and they were no longer the unified force they had once been. "Take advantage of the confusion," Darius said, her voice low. "Target their remaining heavy ships. We hit them now, or we'll never get another chance." The crew worked quickly, recalibrating the Horizon's weapons. They fired once more, this time focusing all their energy on the largest remaining ships in the Zakar fleet. The blasts tore through their defenses, leaving the alien ships vulnerable. The tide was turning. For the first time in what felt like forever, Captain Darius allowed herself a small breath of relief. They had done it. The Zakar were no longer the unstoppable force they had seemed. But even as she felt the rush of victory, she knew the war wasn't over. The alien fleet was staggering, but they weren't finished. There would be more battles, more challenges ahead. But humanity had proven something today. The Zakar had come to Earth thinking they could crush the humans beneath their feet. Instead, they had unleashed the one thing they hadn't prepared for, the unyielding will to survive. And that was something no alien force could ever defeat. As Darius watched the enemy fleet begin to falter, she whispered to herself, "We're just getting started." The war had only just begun, but Earth's secret weapon was clear, the heart and soul of humanity, unbreakable and determined to fight for its survival. The battle had taken a drastic turn, but the Zakar weren't the only ones feeling the heat. The Horizon had been battered and bruised by relentless fire, its hull cracked and sparking in places. Inside, the crew was exhausted, but their resolve had hardened like steel. There was no turning back now. The Zakar had underestimated humanity's will to fight, but they were about to discover just how far the human spirit could go. Captain Darius stood at the bridge, her eyes fixed on the holographic map of the battlefield. The Zakar fleet, though faltering, still had the firepower to destroy Earth. Their largest ships had been crippled, But there were still more on the way. The horizon was no longer the surprise it had once been. Their enemies had adjusted, and the moment of advantage was slipping away. "We need to end this now," Darius said, her voice a sharp command. "If we don't take them down now, they'll regroup, and we'll never get another chance." Lieutenant Morales, his face drawn and tired, nodded grimly. "We've got a few fighters left, but we're nearly out of power. If we don't hit them with everything we have, we're done for." Darius paced in front of the crew, every step measured. She knew the odds. They were outgunned, outnumbered, and the horizon was barely operational. But something inside her refused to let them quit. She had seen what humanity could do when pushed to the edge. She had seen what they were willing to sacrifice for survival. "We don't need to win this fight, Lieutenant. We just need to make them pay for every inch," she said, her voice steady but fierce. "Give them the kind of fight they'll never forget." The bridge fell silent. The crew understood. They had given everything for this moment, and there was no more room for doubt. This wasn't just about defeating the Zykar. It was about sending a message to the galaxy that Earth could and would stand up against any force that tried to crush them. "Sir, our remaining fighters are ready for launch," Lieutenant Timmons called out from the operations console. "They're armed with enough explosives to take out their flagship." Darius took a deep breath. She glanced at the worn faces of her crew, all of them tired, all of them knowing what needed to be done. But none of them hesitated. They were ready. "Launch the fighters, and patch me through to all remaining ships," Darius ordered. "We're going to fight until the last shot is fired. We may not have the strength to survive, but we'll make sure they never forget who took them on." The horizon shook as it powered up, pushing itself to the limit. The remaining fighter ships, small and nimble, zipped from the launch bays, streaking through space toward the crippled Zykar fleet. Darius watched them disappear into the darkness. It would be a one-way trip for most of them. But the human soldiers didn't hesitate. They fought with everything they had. The battle grew fierce as the fighters made their final charge toward the enemy flagship. Explosions lit up the vastness of space as the small ships slammed into their targets, taking down one enemy ship after another. But as the horizon pushed forward, the alien fleet retaliated. The sky was filled with fire, and each shot brought the horizon one step closer to destruction. Then it happened. A massive explosion rocked the horizon, throwing Darius from her feet. The bridge lights flickered, and alarms screamed in every corner of the ship. Pieces of the hull tore loose, and the ship groaned under the strain. Darius gritted her teeth as she pulled herself up. "Status report," she demanded, voice strained but determined. "We've lost main engines. Power's down to 10%. Morales shouted. "We're going to drift into the enemy fleet if we don't fix it. Get us moving." "Any way you can," Darius ordered, her voice low but insistent. Her crew scrambled, working with a sense of urgency that only came when survival was on the line. Outside, the enemy fleet was closing in. The Zykar had regrouped, and they were no longer distracted by the chaos. Their remaining ships were preparing for the final blow. But just as the horizon appeared to be on the brink of destruction, a new presence entered the battlefield. More human ships, barely operational but determined, entered the fray, giving the horizon the chance it needed. The reinforcements had arrived. The Zykar had underestimated humanity once again. "They're here," Morales shouted, his face lighting up with renewed hope. "The reinforcements are joining the fight." Darius couldn't afford to waste any time. They had one final shot. The Zykar flagship loomed ahead, an imposing, dark figure in space. If they could take it down, they could cripple the entire alien fleet. "Prepare all remaining weapons," Darius commanded. "This is it. We hit them with everything we've got." The horizon surged forward, its last reserves of power being pushed to the limit. As they closed in on the Zykar flagship, the crew held their breath. The remaining fighter ships flanked the horizon, engaging the enemy, while Darius aimed her sights directly at the Zykar command center. With a deafening roar, the Horizon fired its final weapon, a powerful, concentrated blast that tore through the alien ship shields, hitting its core. The explosion lit up the black void like a second sun. It was over. The Zykar flagship shattered into pieces, and with it, the heart of the Zykar fleet. The remaining ships faltered, losing their cohesion as the human forces pressed their advantage. The battle was won. But even as the crew cheered in triumph, Darius knew the war was far from over. Earth had sent its message, loud and clear, to the stars. Humanity would not back down. They had fought, and they had won, but they would continue to fight for their place in the galaxy. The Horizon had given them a chance, but it was the human spirit that would carry them forward.